Master Duel needs to ban Maxx C. This game has been out for well over a year now, and while it's had its share of legitimate improvements and annoying mistakes, there's one thing which consistently makes the dueling experience worse. Maxx C. The Earth Insect is a blight upon Master Duel. It is a card which does nothing for the game except make it frustrating to play and tedious to watch. There is no good reason for Maxx C to be legal, and I'm going to prove it by going over every single argument I've heard in defense of Maxx C and systematically proving them all wrong. There's a lot of ground to cover, so let's jump right into it with...
It's not broken. You can counter it.
I'm gonna start by going over the most common argument I hear, which essentially boils down to, well, just draw the out. Maxx C is no big deal, I hear. There's these little cards called Ash Blossom and Called By. Just use those, idiot. Two things. One, every card has counters. It doesn't matter how broken or powerful something seems, there is a way to stop it. I mean, you can counter Last Turn and Pot of Greed with Ash Blossom. Does that mean those cards are healthy for the game? Of course not. Just because a card has counters doesn't mean it should be legal. In fact, sometimes the opposite is true, which brings me to point number 2. One of the main goals of the ban list, as admitted by Konami themselves, is to foster deck diversity. They ban the best cards in the game so that players are forced to use something else. Because if the most powerful cards were never hit, then people would continue playing them forever and the game would get stale. Which is exactly what has happened with Maxx C. For 16 long months now, the entire life of Master Duel, this bug has been the most played card in the game. And because Maxx C is the top card in every format, its 2 counter cards remain at the top as well. So if you're tired of every single deck playing Ash Blossom, you can blame Maxx C for that. And we know this because in the TCG, where the bug is banned, Ash Blossom fell out of favor during Sprite and Tearlament format. It simply wasn't impactful enough against those decks to see consistent play. But in Master Duel, since Maxx C is in every deck, and Ash Blossom counters Maxx C, it has remained one of the most played cards despite the shifting meta. My point is, the fact that we have 2 specific counters to Maxx C is part of the problem. Rather than see a wide variety of cards and strategies, 90% of deck lists start with the same 8 cards, which takes the fun out of deck building and makes the games more predictable and less interesting.
It's not broken. You can play around it.
Now, the second most common argument I hear is that Maxx C isn't worthy of being banned because you can just play around it. After all, when someone activates this card, you have choices. You can continue special summoning and give your opponent more cards, or you can stop summoning and deny them those resources. Maxx C defenders will act as though this is a meaningful decision that will have different outcomes. And maybe that's true if you play the game casually, but at the higher tiers of Yu-Gi-Oh, this is a lose-lose situation. Cards are the resource in this game. The more cards you have, the more you can do, especially if you're playing a strong deck where every card has the potential to start a combo. In a meta deck, drawing just 2 cards is a huge advantage, and drawing 3 or more essentially guarantees that you win the game. So if your opponent throws down Maxx C, playing into it isn't really an option. Even if you only summon a couple of times, you're still probably putting yourself in a losing position. Faced with that reality, you might think that it's best to just pass without summoning anything. Except most modern decks have the ability to win the game on an open board, either by just dealing 8,000 damage in one turn, or by establishing enough disruptions to prevent you from playing entirely. The fact is, if you don't put up some defenses, you also lose. In the end, Maxx C only offers the illusion of choice. Either way, you're screwed. It's just a matter of if you want to give your opponent the best draw power in the game, or the best floodgate in the game. Take your pick.
It's not broken. Just don't play combo.
Of course, that previous argument is usually followed up with something like,
Well, if your deck can't play around Maxx C, perhaps you shouldn't special summon so much.
listen here, you little gremlin, it is 2023. Every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Special summons, and they have for years now. With the exception of Floowandereeze exactly, every single archetype is going to throw some monsters onto the field sometimes. Monarchs must summon their squires. Yosenjus perform pendulum summons. Spirit monsters have rituals now. And even true Dracos have that trap that special summons out of the graveyard. It doesn't matter how slow and grindy a deck is. Even trap-based controlled archetypes like Eldritch and Labyrinth have to special summon once or twice. And as I just said in the last part, even getting 2 draws off of Maxx C can be game determinative. I mean, there's a reason why Maxx C has remained the most played card in Master Duel, even in formats dominated by Eldritch and Runic and Floowandereeze. Because it's not only good against combo decks, it's good against every deck that special summons. Which in the modern game is every deck, period.
But we need Maxx C to stop the combo decks.
Speaking of combo decks, I should address this little gem. Every time I talk about banning Maxx C, someone says something along the lines of,
But if we do that, the combo decks will dominate the meta.
Bitch, the combo decks already dominate the meta! Have you even played this game? Drytron, Adamancipator, Virtual World, Halkarorodon Piles, Swordsoul, Sprite, Tearlament, these are all decks that spend their turn special summoning. And Maxx C didn't do a damn thing to stop them from running rampant. Furthermore, just look at the TCG. The Western format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had Maxx C banned for years now, and they have not been overtaken by combo decks. In fact, if you compare their meta to the OCG, where Maxx C is legal, it's practically the same. So if Maxx C is supposed to stop summon spam from dominating the competitive scene, then it has failed at that job.
But my rogue deck needs Maxx C to compete.
Look, I get it. I've been there. I mostly play rogue decks myself, and I know how satisfying it can be to win against some busted combo deck because you resolved Maxx C and drew enough cards to overpower their completely unfair end board. But I also know how absolutely infuriating it is to be facing down one of those degenerate end boards, only to have them drop Maxx C on me the second the turn starts. It's not enough that you gotta play through 5 negates, you gotta do it under Maxx C as well. And that's the key here. That's the reason why Maxx C doesn't stop combo decks or propel rogue strategies into the top of Diamond. Because combo decks can also play Maxx C. Unlike some well-designed cards, the bug has no cost or restrictions. You can activate it going first or going second. It doesn't reduce the damage you deal, or limit the plays you can make, or remove any of your cards from the field. You can drop it at any point, in any phase, even if you already control a million negates. You don't need to build your deck around it, you don't have to include potential bricks, and there is zero risk to activating it because it costs nothing. Every deck can play Maxx C, even the broken combo decks. And they do, because as I said earlier, it's useful against every deck. Even if your rogue strategy is only going to summon once or twice, that's still 2 more extenders for the combo player. So for every game they lose to Maxx C, they win another one because of it. And in the long run, that balances out. It doesn't stop them from being the best deck. All it does is ensure that 10% of all games will be decided by whoever resolves Maxx C. Which is the crux of why I hate this card. At the end of the day, I just want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Win or lose, I want to feel like the outcome was the result of intelligent playmaking or creative deck building. I don't want to feel like the game was decided entirely by luck, by whichever player was fortunate enough to open the one card that we're all playing.
Okay, fine. Maxx C doesn't stop most combo decks, but it does keep the worst ones in check. Without Maxx C, we'd see a lot more people using broken cards like Rongo Miniad or Galaxy Tomahawk. And you don't want that, do ya?
Alright, so this one's a bit long, and that's because it actually has a decent point. There are some high-roll combo decks that don't have room for Maxx C, and these are somewhat kept in check by its existence. If we banned Maxx C tomorrow, it's likely that these solitaire decks would see a surge in playability. That being said, there's a really easy solution to this. Just ban Rongo Nimiad and Galaxy Tomahawk! And every other FTK enabler for that matter. I mean, it's not as though these are fun and interactive cards. If the whole point of Maxx C is to stop these from showing up, then why not just cut out the middleman and ban them outright? Make sure they don't show up by making them forbidden. Now, this argument in particular was made by several Japanese players when I briefly tweeted at their version of the Master Duel Twitter. They seemed to think that the TCG ban list was overly restrictive, and they were worried about that same philosophy coming to Master Duel. From what I understand, it's because they like the freedom to play more decks. They want as few cards on the ban list as possible, and they feel that keeping Maxx C legal is what allows for that, since Maxx C counters all these broken cards that we would have to ban otherwise. And yeah, I guess you are technically able to play Tomahawk Turbo in Master Duel. But what's the point if you're hard countered by Maxx C? Once again, this feels like the illusion of choice. You can legally play more decks, but those builds won't be competitive, which means there's no reason to play them on the competitive ladder where the ban list is in effect. The outcome is essentially the same. You're restricted from playing degenerate combo decks. The only difference is that Maxx C doesn't only counter big combo. There's a lot of mid-range archetypes, like Salamandrate and Libromancer, that need to special summon a lot in order to accomplish their basic plays. Both of these are relatively fair control decks, designed to just make 1 or 2 negates a turn and then recycle their resources on subsequent turns. It's just that in order to do that, they need to special summon 4 or more times. Maxx C hits decks like these harder than most others, essentially knocking them out of meta contention when they might have otherwise been playable. It would be awesome to pilot these decks competitively, but because they auto-lose to Maxx C as hard as the solitaire combo decks do, they don't see any real play. In that way, I think that having a less restrictive ban list with fewer cards on it actually gives players less choices in what they can play. The fact that all these cards are legal means that a whole bunch of decks are never going to get a chance to shine. Alright, so now that we got all the big ones out of the way, it's time for the Goblin Joe Lightning Round!
This is an OCG simulator, and the OCG has Maxx C.
False! The current Master Duel ban list is far different from the OCG's. It may have started similarly, but things have deviated significantly since then. Master Duel is clearly its own format, with its own list, and there is no reason it couldn't ban whatever the hell it wants.
Well, the OCG has Maxx C, and it's doing just fine.
Debatable! But even if we ignore the quality of the OCG, the fact remains that the TCG doesn't have Maxx C, and it is equally fine or better. Also, the OCG is a best-of-3 format with side decking and a completely different card pool, so, maybe that's the reason Maxx C works for them. You think about that?
Still, this is a Japanese game marketed to a Japanese audience. They don't care what Americans think, and they never will.
Then why did they release the game in America, in English, with a huge advertising campaign? This is the most Cope reasoning since Cope came to Copetown. Master Duel obviously wants Western customers, which means the devs should heed our criticisms.
But most of the players are in Japan, and the Japanese love Maxx C.
The Japanese are not a monolith. They don't all agree with each other all the time. They are people with individual opinions, and I know for a fact that not all of them like the bug. But even if I'm wrong, even if every Japanese player loves it, will they quit the game if it's banned? I doubt it. If Western players can put up with Maxx C being legal for well over a year, then surely Japanese players can at least try playing with it banned. Experiment! The forbidden list is changed every month. If the OCG players revolt at losing their precious Maxx C, then the devs can just put it back to 3. There's no risk.
Shut up! You're just a noob who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Fool! I have played this game for 10 years now. 10 long years. And I've made YouTube content for 8 of those years. So there's video proof of my dueling experience. I've also streamed Master Duel twice a week since launch, and I regularly make it to Diamond. I may not be the best player, but I know what I'm talking about.
You just want to ban Maxx C because you always lose to it.
Your mother loses to Maxx C. But also I play the bug myself, and it helps me win just as many games as I lose, so despite my tone, I'm not making this video out of anger or some delusional belief that I'll win more when it's gone. My only real motivation is to improve the game, to make it more competitive, more interesting for spectators. You know, I kind of do this for a living. I'd like if it thrived and succeeded.
But I think Maxx C is fun.
Well, I don't think it's fun. Seems our emotional reasons have canceled each other out. I suppose we'll have to rely on logic to solve this. And oh, would you look at that! I've made a whole video of logical arguments. Do you have a video of logical arguments? I think not!
Fuck you!
No, fuck you!
Okay, but what about the other broken cards? Surely there are more pressing matters than Maxx C.
So this is less of a pro-Maxx C argument and more of a deflection, but I hear it often enough that it's worth bringing up regardless. Oftentimes when I talk about wanting to ban Maxx C, I'll get people telling me there are bigger fish to fry. What about tier limit, they say? That's the best deck, and it's limiting diversity. By your logic, the devs should ban that too. Yeah, they will. You think they aren't going to hit tier limit? Of course they are. They've hit every meta tech, and this will be no exception. It's just going to take a month or two. That's how this game works. Everything broken gets banned eventually, you just get time to play with it. Same with floodgates. Yeah, there's still too many available in my opinion, but Master Duel has been working on that. We've seen many of the worst floodgates get banned or limited, to the point that we almost have a decent list for a best of one game without side decks. The reason that I harp on Maxx C in particular is because that card has been a problem since day one. When Master Duel launched, people were complaining about the Maxx C minigame. And I'll admit, having it legal for a few months was an interesting experience. But more than a year later, and any novelty has long since worn off. I'm sick of this card. It's not healthy for the game, it doesn't create fun or interesting scenarios, it doesn't encourage creative deck building, and unlike every other broken card, it doesn't seem to ever rotate out of the meta. It is a constant problem, and unless we complain about it, I don't think the devs are ever going to fix it.
But complaining about it won't accomplish anything.
Now this isn't a direct argument for Maxx C either, but it is something I hear a lot, and it does help to maintain the status quo, so it's worth going over regardless. Now first and foremost, Konami is a business, and Master Duel is a product. That product exists for the enjoyment of us, the customers. They make good product, and we give them money for it. This is business 101. So if there's something we don't like about their product, something that makes their service less enjoyable, then it is not only our right to complain, it is our duty to complain. Giving feedback is how we get a better game. Making their game better is how they get more paying customers. Complaining to companies actively improves things for everyone, and staying silent about problems is objectively bad. Now, of course, when it comes to a business as big as Master Duel with millions of players, they can't possibly listen to every criticism. Many complaints are going to conflict with each other. For every person saying the timer is too short, there's another complaining that it's too long. Perhaps more importantly though, most of these complaints are just fleeting emotional responses. This is a competitive game. Players will get salty over lost duels and make stupid demands in the heat of the moment. They do it all the time, and usually they don't have a very compelling argument beyond, "This card make me angry." So if we want our criticisms to be taken seriously, we have to show two things. One, that a majority of customers agree that something is a problem, and two, that we aren't just temporarily angry, that this is a persistent and logical problem. That's why I made this video, and why I spent the last 100+ days on Twitter telling Konami that they need to ban the bug. I'm here to show that this isn't one guy getting angry over a lost duel. Maxx C is an objectively bad card. It was poorly designed, it doesn't fit in the modern format, and having it legal in Master Duel actively reduces the fun and excitement of the game. I've held this opinion for well over a year, it is backed up by logical reasoning, and as I've shown in this video, every single counter-argument can be easily dismissed. Maxx C must be banned. And the only way to accomplish that is for you to help. Let the developers of Master Duel know what we, the paying customers, want. If you're on Twitter, join me by telling @Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel that we should ban Maxx C. If you speak Japanese and you'd like to appeal to the Japanese developers, you can tell @Yugioh_MD_info to hashtag this, which I'm told is ban Maxx C in Japanese. If you're not on Twitter, that's fine. You can petition the company in a variety of other ways. Perhaps the most direct method is using the surveys within Master Duel itself. After every event, the devs ask for feedback. Let them know. This game would be better if they banned Maxx C. Or if you just want to keep things brief, just copy and paste the hashtag over and over and over again. Getting the attention of the Master Duel devs is difficult. Konami and its subsidiaries are notorious for not communicating with their customers. But they do listen. They've made changes based on feedback before. And if we make this a big enough issue, if enough people speak up, then they will act. And our requests are not difficult or overly demanding. Either ban the bug outright, or give us a TCG format without it. Or at the very least, give us some explanation. Let us know what your goal is with this game, and why you choose to keep Maxx C at 3, despite everything I've said here. If they can do that, then perhaps I'll stop this campaign. But until then, the battle continues onwards. Never give up, never surrender. From sea to shining sea, we will beat back the bug and make Master Duel the best it can possibly be. Thank you for listening, and until next time, good luck and have fun.